All right. Filchard, advanced path filchard. These are very much thieves. This is the if you want to be thiefy and sneaky and specifically like into that archetype, like when you think of rogue in this game or LARP, you think of like dodging and assassinating type stuff. But this is very much the standard like D&D rogue member of the thief guild type of pathway archetype. This is like a drug dealer. this is a uh, this is a fence. This is somebody who's a dedicated thief. And thieving in this game is possible. Okay, it's possible, and you can do it. There are mechanics around it, and if you really want to get like into that, you can, and you can find a rogue marshal. They're called rogue marshals, and like you can talk to like members about like how this stuff works. Because we very much do not want you stealing from stuff. Like we don't want you stealing actual people's stuff. That is not cool. And there have been instances of that, so people do not like that at all. Okay. Um, there's when it comes to stealing, you're stealing tags, and it's something like you're stealing the tag of the item. You're not taking the actual item. Okay, like it's very important. Uh, there are like we don't want you stealing people's $40 latex swords that they paid good money for, and then like not giving it back. That would suck. So there are mechanical ways to steal things in game. It is possible. Town members are not gonna like you, and I'm pretty sure that's totally valid reason to go like permanently kill you. Maybe not permanently kill you, but make you go resurrect is a pretty good option. Uh, like I would be my character would definitely justify that if I found that I got stolen from. So yeah, keep that in mind when you're thinking about stealing stuff. You can play a filtered and not steal stuff. Okay, let's put it that way. Um, but if you are going to be stealing stuff, like filtered is kind of the path you want to do. All right, that out of the way, because that's a very important concept to understand. Is that like don't actually steal people's real stuff. That will get you. That will bring police involvement. Okay, so we'll jump right into the skills. Filtered skills. One wizardry. Filtered can levitate. Pretty cool. Certain races just get to do that, but this is more than just reditate. Reditate? What the heck? Levitate. This is more than just levitate, the skill that people get for racials. This is more than that. Filtered may use the skill to levitate across pools of liquid or floors as so as to not touch the surface. This would avoid setting off pressure plates, etc. No skill can be used during this, and the filtered must remain concentrated on his efforts. To use this ability, the filtered must notify a marshal they are using this ability before levitating. However, they may use the skill upon landing to be unaffected by falling damage, so this also is pseudo pay 1 wizardry so I don't take the falling damage. It is not necessary for the filtered to make a verbal call when using this ability, however, a marshal must be informed. So you just say that you're levitating. Like, that's a very common thing that people say, is like, I'm levitating, but filtered levitating is different, kind of. Uh, each of use of this ability will last for the duration of a scene/obstacle. That's interesting. So it's not I pay 1 wizardry and now I'm levitating at will for the combat duration. You're paying like 1 wizardry per, which at the ratio of 1 wizardry, that's not like a bad thing. This allows the following: avoiding traps inside or on the floor. Step quietly for a scene that requires silence. One of the coolest if I if I tell you about it, then it doesn't. It was a long time ago, and it was on a plane. It was on a part of Aldratha that got blown up, and it doesn't exist anymore. So I feel free. Okay, so we had to poison a well. Okay, and I know this sounds bad. All right, I poisoned a well, but there was I had to get past a bunch of like guard dogs or like guard things that they might not have been dogs. They were things that could smell you, but they couldn't see you. Is like it was some kind of monster, but it was like a obedient, like quiet, like tameable monster. And so there was a bunch of NPCs walking around with their head down, so they couldn't see me. And it was like the middle of the night. It was like midnight, so it was like dark as hell out. And they were like, "You need to sneak past all these NPCs without like doing anything, like without getting seen or getting caught or whatever, and there's like real stakes. And I was and they had to have only one person could do it, and I was in a group of like 3 or 4 people that were going on this adventure, and it was very much a go do this scumbaggy thing for a really good amount of money, and it was it was a good amount of money at the time. Okay, I was poor. I didn't it was something to do at midnight. Like, it was cool. Okay, so I said yes in a LARP. All right, don't judge me for it. But it was a one of my favorite mods, honestly. It was actually like, it's people make fun of me for it, for poisoning a well, but it's like actually one of my favorite mods I've ever done. Uh, and it was very unique, so I remember it very very much. And so I had to. The thing is that everybody looked around, and there were literally two of us. Two of the characters that were in this group of people were literally wearing bells. Like, they literally had like, I'm right here. You can tell I'm walking right here, and they were like part of their costume, so they couldn't just take it off. And I walked around a little bit to see what sound I made, and I just like inherently made the least amount of sound. So I dropped like my belt, my weapon, and I kept like a dagger with me. And I like snuck past all these guys without making a sound, like making sure I wasn't stepping on like sticks and stuff, because this was a wooded area. Um and I poisoned a well and I came back, and like that's what I think of when I think of Filchard. Like, and I'm gonna be 100% honest with you, and this is kind of goes into the roleplay too. I don't think that I've ever met a Filchard in game. I could be completely wrong, because the point of Filchard. So before the rule book made all the advanced paths seeable, Filchard, like there were some like advanced paths that you knew a couple of the skills and you knew like what they were, and they were like commonplace. Um, but Filchard was like known of in game, but nobody knew what it was. Like, they were very secretive. It was very secretive. It was You were part of the Thief Guild. So like people assumed that other people were Filchards, but we couldn't ever prove it. And I don't think I've ever talked to anybody out of game, like just like after the event's over and just talking to people. I don't think I've ever met a Filchard. I don't think I've seen a player play Filchard ever. That I'm aware of, which very much goes into the lore. Filchards aren't going to tell you they're Filchards, okay? Like, they're not going to tell you. So that very much could just be, maybe there's like 3 Filchards in town and I have no clue. Uh, but yeah, that's what I think of when I think of Filchard, and that's what the skill reminds me of, is that I had to actually step quietly, and then these guys can pay 1 wizardry for a whole scene to just say, I am stepping quietly, and they probably don't have to drop half their costume to make sure they're quiet. Um, this is relevant. May be used to leave no tracks when traveling. 1 instance of falling damage, we talked about that earlier. May be used to leave no tracks when traveling. There's now that was like a pseudo mechanic, and now there's actually and when we get into Ranger, you're gonna see that there are actual production based skills, I think, or it might be a research based skill. There's an actual skill you can get in the game for tracking that used to not exist. Okay, especially when Filtered came out, it was a pseudo thing. So this directly interacts with that, though, I would imagine now. Um, so this is relevant to the point that like other players can't figure out where you went. That's cool. Um, 1 wizardry for 5 minutes. That seems like a totally valued ratio. I could definitely like pump something out in 5 minutes if I wanted to not leave any tracks. Like, that's pretty dope. And you could just pay 3 and be 15 or whatever. Like, you could pay 6 and have it be an hour. Maybe my math is wrong on that. I don't want to look like an idiot on YouTube. 6 times 5, 30. Okay, it'd be half an hour. But yeah. This is an interesting skill. Very neat. And it's very indicative of Filchard, I would assume. This is very cool. Filchard Liberation. Filchards can release themselves from confinements. Silently releases a Filchard from being magically or mundane held. This will work on webs, pins, binds, confines, ropes, chains, etc. Please note, some situations may require notification of Marshal when using this ability. For example, if used in combat, please notify a combat marshal when able. Uh, Confine is scary, and then this goes out of the way. Ropes and chains aren't actual. So web, pin, bind, and confine are actual spells and like solid mechanical effects. And then you're also getting the ability to escape from ropes and chains. Okay, so somebody chains you up, you cannot be affected by this, or you can escape from it, which is sick. That's cool, and it's very roleplay. Mechanically, this means that you don't care about webs, pins, binds, and confines, which is awesome. That's like that in and of itself is a good skill. And then ropes and chains for roleplay too is cool. It's neat. And I imagine if you're playing Filchard, you're probably going to end up in that situation at one point. So this will be a very relevant skill. Pass walk. Filchard can pass through magical barriers. By paying the per use cost, Filchard has 1 minute to pass through a magical barrier. This skill needs to be only used once when passing through the barrier, regardless of how many. You're doing it for 15 wizardry, so this is expensive. So you don't just do this to walk through circles in town. Regardless of how many additional magical defenses have been placed on it, including runes, this Filchard may pass through the magic barrier as many times as that many as please. Please ask a rogue marshal to supervise this activity. This skill may not be used to bypass boxes, containers, or relics. I'm sure that matters. So if there's a common thing called a ward, and players use them to ward their cabin, and then they only let certain people into the cabin, because maybe they're a guild or a house, and they like a group of players, like a dedicated group of players that are like, we're this house. And they'll like ward their cabin. So this like lets you sneak in there essentially. What this actually means is that when I imagine you're doing filtered missions, like you're sneaking into somewhere for some reason, uh, NPCs put up wards just as much as for when you're going on an adventure specifically for filtered. I imagine NPCs probably put up wards just as much, or probably a lot more than players do. And so this might be super relevant in that case. But just having it in your pocket, being able to do that is cool. It's neat. It also lets you use other people's wards as, oh crap, this monster's killing me. There's a ward around. I can pay 15 wizardry to run through it real quick and avoid this monster. Yeah, there's like a couple good uses for this skill, so definitely something to like. It's definitely not a bad skill. Deep pockets. Filtered's chosen pouch becomes an extra dimensional space. You get bag of holding. Okay, this is the only way to get a bag of holding in game, as far as I'm aware. It's essentially a bag of holding. Okay, and there's a ton of, if you've played Dungeons and Dragons, you understand the fundamentals of how actually busted bag of holding can be, and how quickly people try and break the game with bag of holding. So this whole paragraph is basically just giving you rules to make sure that you don't do stupid stuff with it. Filchard may access the pouch for 1 wizardry. It is possible to later choose a different pouch for 10 wizardry. Each change is only possible to have 1 deep pockets. His pouch is considered bonded to the Filchard, but does not identify as such, which is super cool. It becomes a miniature portal to a pocket dimension for storing things acquired. Anything placed in the pouch by the Filchard immediately shifts out silently, is placed in the pouch as out of game. So you can be carrying around your stuff. And as far as I'm aware, you're the only person that has access to this. The Filchard may access the pouch to retrieve items for the cost of 1 wizardry. So dirt cheap. It's okay. I mean, doing it for free would not be too much of an issue, but I mean, 1 wizardry is essentially free. It just means that like you have to think about it. But yeah, you get bag of holding, which is sweet, and it's just a pouch no larger than a shield, so it can't be like a backpack. But yeah, this is neat. It's cool. Identify. Filchard can identify per the augment identify ability. So if you saw the augments, there's 3 augments with wizardry, and all 3 of those got a specific magic touch identify thing skill. Which if you want to go see that actual skill, go look at the augment videos. Any of the augments, so like dragon, worm, and what else is it? Hold up. Oh, an Eldritch Trickster. That makes sense. So this is very much in the Eldritch Trickster category too. Like, if Eldritch Trickster is not the only pathway to be doing like sneaky, unique stuff. Okay, Filtered is definitely like a way to go. Oh no, no, I hit the wrong button. Get me back to filtered. All right. Yeah, you get to use it as if it was those things. As if it was the augment identify. Uh, yeah, like you get an augment skill essentially, which is cool. Filchard can now move objects into magical circles. Procure. By holding an item that is no larger than a shield, it is not attached to any other item, and saying Filchard Procure, the item immediately shifts out and is brought to a circle of the Filchard's choosing that he is invested in. This item may not travel across a different plane. It is possible to purchase a skill up to 5 times. So, what this lets you do is you set up a circle that you are then invested in the middle of the tavern, and you let maybe a couple other people have access to the circle, and you go on an adventure, and then everybody hands the loot to the Filchard, and he shifts it all out so that way it can't be lost. Maybe handing all the loot to a Filchard is actually, in retrospect, a pretty bad idea. So maybe not that. But like, if you have an important plot item that you get and you want to make, and it's like shatterable, which is like most of the time it's not shatterable, so it's not that big of a deal. But if for some reason you need to shoot an important item away really quickly and get it out of the adventure where it can be harmed, um, then this is a really good thing. That's in terms of an adventure. In terms of stealing stuff, being able to no larger than a shield, but that could be like a small box holding something very important, right? This could be you snuck into a castle and got like a bill of rights or a bill of document type paperwork, and you shifted it into the center of town like immediately, right? There's so many potential uses for this that it's actually super neat. Uh, the problem with Filchard that we're seeing here is that none of this stuff does combat at all, right? Like none of this interacts with combat. So you're exclusively relying on your spells and potentially rogue. I would assume you have rogue if you're playing it Filchard. I would assume a lot of people have rogue because rogue is pretty good. Being able to dodge is neat. But so you're definitely playing Filchard, but the problem is if you get caught, you don't have things that potentially can save you from damage or any sort of combat. And it might sound like I'm coming from this perspective of like, oh yeah, I only do combat and I never roleplay, which, fair enough. But also, this is a boffer LARP, and like 80% of this game involves boffer combat, okay? Like that's like a lot of what people are doing here, and a lot of characters build themselves around that, knowing that that's going to happen. Um, so like to have an entire pathway that literally has no kind of attacking way. There's not like I'm a thief, so I get like an interesting backstab skill, because this is also wizardry, right? This isn't a rogue, so they have to do like what can wizardry do? And the answer is you just cast defensive spells. There's nothing here that says that you can't concentrate and go get you can't concentrate in an element and then go get like do balls for one. So there's still plenty of ways to be like just having wizardry in and of itself can be offensive. Uh, so that's kind of what you're relying on the base rulebook for, which is not a bad option. You're just not getting anything particularly unique in terms of combat, which could change with Totem. We'll see what rituals they're able to store. Now this is a unique skill. Lie under oath. The character may lie, even if forced to tell the truth through an in-game ability, which if you saw Paladin, the Paladin augment, they have an ability like that. In the Psionic Will tree, there is a way to detect lie, which is different from telling the truth. I guess that's kind of self-explanatory. But yeah, this also fools detect lie. And similar effects, okay? And then, just like in any D&D style game or tabletop RPG, there's circles of truth or zone of truth effects that exist in game. I don't really think that's like spoiler alert, but like those type of things are like in game, and so this hits similar effects. No in-game call needs to be made, but you have to inform a marshal afterwards that like, hey, yeah, by the way, I actually did lie. Their pre-use costs need only be paid once per questioner per session. Oh, that's not the skill. 5 wizardry. So if you're in a room with like 5 different people, You have to pay 5 wizardry for each person that you directly lie to. Um, yeah. This very much assumes that they've got you like in a circle that you're not. So what they do is that so in circles inherently. So you might be able to get out of ropes with liberation, right? And I mean they're gonna assume that you're filtered at that point. But you might be able to get out of ropes or chains or whatever. Hopefully you've hidden the fact that you're filtered from them so they don't know what you are, so you can lie without being immediately like, oh well he's a filtered, you can fucking lie. Right? Like hopefully. But what a lot of players do is they will put you in a circle and then take away your investment in that circle. So essentially, to be able to, there's a spell called Magic Circle, which lets you put up a 10-foot, up to 10-foot circle, I think, of which is a rope. It's a white rope, and it has to be like a good circle. It can't be like crappily shaped. And it's like a bubble of safety. Think of Lehman's tiny hut from 5th edition D&D, kind of, but it's like kind of like an orb and you can pseudo see through it. But like spells and attacks, psionics specifically do go through it. By the way, so a psionic does not care about that circle. But uh, to be able to walk into the circle, you have to be there when you have to be inside of it when the circle pops up. Like when so they've set up the circle like with the rope, and then they cast the actual spell on the circle to make it an official circle. If you're standing inside of it, you are what is known as invested, and it means that you can walk in and out of it, and you may also provide permission for individuals to also other that weren't in the circle to walk into it and through it. So what they do is they set up a circle, they're invested in it, and they specifically only give you permission to enter the circle. And then they immediately take that away too as soon as they throw you in there. And then so you're essentially locked in a magical circle. And short of having worm destroy magic touch or similar effects of ways to dispel circles, which is like dispel magic and stuff, um, short of blowing a ton of wizardry pool or sorcery pool to get rid of the circle, you're stuck in that circle, and they're very much going to like keep you in there, and they'll probably have you surrounded in that circle. So yeah, so specifically, uh, you're going to be in and that's all to explain that you're going to be in a circle and there's probably going to be a lot of people questioning you, so you're going to be dumping wizardry to be able to lie. So hopefully they only have like one guy who's doing all the talking, and then you get a dump pool into that guy instead of like you only have to pay the 5 wizardry. So pseudo understanding, if you know that you're dealing with a Filchard and trying to figure out the truth, ask him as many questions as possible from as many different people as possible, and he'll run out of wizardry eventually. Okay. Filchard craft totem. Okay. Let's see. So just like Elementalist and Chronomancer that we've seen already, they have a wizardry totem. I've already covered this. Go look at those. We're gonna specifically look at Filchard's rituals. Okay. Which I have no effing idea what they do, but I'm gonna assume like I do because I'm the one making the YouTube video. Plain anchor, have no idea what that does, but sounds cool. Duplicate ward key. You make a duplicate of a key for a ward, I would assume. Uh, so like that's neat. Because you get to walk through wards, but maybe like wards are more important than that. I don't know. I assume warding is actually a ritual as well. By the way, plain anchor. Maybe that's important. I have no idea. There was some skill over here that was like mattered that it mattered what plane you were on, so maybe that interacts that way. Mystical cryptography. This alone makes me want to play a Filchard and figure out what this thing is, because that sounds like a cool damn name. That sounds cryptography? Mystical, that sounds so cool. Like I want to go in game and play a Filchard and go figure out what that is. Like that's so like this. I think Filchard, honestly, if you want my opinion, I think Filchard sucks. But I would still play a Filchard. I want to play a raccoon beast man with a trench coat, and I want to walk in and I want to be a Filchard. Portable Circle 5, or Portable Circle, that sounds like a ritual to make a circle that you can pick up and put away and put it back down later, I assume. Yeah, this is cool. And these seem neat. If any of these are expensive and or useful, that they'd be super good. I imagine portable circle is useful. Like that's the easiest one to like I assume to just guess at what it does. Uh so and like I don't know what it does. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I don't do rituals. I'm an Olophidian. So I literally walk through circles by myself as an Elder Olophidian. I don't care about circles. So like they've never been relevant to me. But except for keeping out bad guys. I imagine this is like I can think of what this would do essentially. And I think that's good. I think people would probably pay money for those. So yeah, pretty cool. Uh, I would say worse than Chronomancer, but depending on what these four rituals are, I would this could be better than Chronomancer. I mean, Chronomancer had like accelerate rituals and stuff in their circle that so like or in their totem. So like that could be that's like straight money as far as I'm aware. But like these could be neat. These could also be money. I have no idea. So yeah, go figure that out. They're cool. And then the cookie, zero build. Filchards can fence items in return for favors. Boom. Okay, so your cookie is actually probably the best skill you have, to be honest. It's super cool. Filchard may safely pass along coin and or items to a representative of the Thief Guild of Wizardry to fence, distribute, etc. as necessary in return for favors from the guild/guild members. Cool. So you're directly interacting with the Thieves Guild, which I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I've never interacted with the Thieves Guild, so which is probably for a reason. They probably don't interact with a whole lot of people. I've never even had anybody mention the Thieves Guild in game to me before, so I would assume that they're probably well hidden. Um, at no point will a true member of the Thieves Guild accept or otherwise deal in foci. Okay. There are in-game reasons for this that I deliberately know why you wouldn't want to deal in foci, and you could find out for yourself. That's for sure. But foci are very much a part of a person. Okay, so like morally that can be kind of messed up. Uh, but also like it's really easy to find a focus. Like it's really easy to find a focus, so they probably don't want to be found by dealing in focuses. The filtered may choose to pass along coin or other items during logistics instead at a 50% reduction in reward. Um, so you have to try and pass this to the Thieves Guild in game, and then they're giving you an option to pass this along during logistics at reduced pricing because you're doing it at logistics where nobody can stop you in game, right? Or nobody can catch you in game, okay? Otherwise, the filtered must still find a locate a representative in-game in order to receive rewards based on the below chart. Please note the chart is a general guide and may be altered based on martial discretion or in-game circumstances. Okay. Get a run out of town for 1 to 25. Get a run out of town even when the runners aren't coming in. Okay. If you understand history a little bit, or if you like looked into ancient civilizations, there were lots of runner systems, or even America had Benjamin Franklin, right? And it amounts the Benjamin Franklin's postal service for the colonies. Uh, it amounts to every mile there is a stand on these very popular routes. Not maybe not every mile, but maybe like every couple miles there's a stand, and there's one or two people sitting in that stand, and they're runners, and they run from one stand to the next stand to pass along a message or a package. They're the Amazon of Eldratha, okay? Um, there are times when there are such dangerous, like chaos is consuming the area, right? Now runners refuse to interact with the town, right? Because there's chaos in the area, so you got to clear out the chaos, right? Runners, there are lots of times where runners are specifically not coming into game, because they'll literally send NPCs all the time to like, hey, I'm a runner. Like, would anybody like to send a run for stuff? And it's very much you send runs all the time for like, hey, I'm trying to find a teacher for this skill, or hey, I'm trying to buy this stuff from a merchant, but nobody in game has this, or no merchants here have that, so I need to go try and buy it from Monster Camp or from an NPC, or etc. There's a gazillion reasons why we do runs. So getting a run out of town even when runners aren't coming in is super cool. Does not guarantee delivery or success. Suck says get a merchant to come into town selling mundane supplies, like guaranteed, I would assume. Get a merchant to come into town with selling mundane supplies at street value, quantities and types of supplies within reason. Uh, a trainer of public skills charging standard rates. So this is a neat skill because while you have to be kind of sneaky to send out this stuff, you can just be. This is very much I'm connected. Okay. Like having a Filchard in town and even potentially knowing he's a Filchard, this skill makes it so that way you don't want to just kill him, right? So this guy can provide essential things for town when town is in a crappy situation. Um, Being able to, because like this one specifically says does not guarantee delivery or success, but you know a guy, you know a merchant that can come into town and sell stuff. You know a guy, you know a trainer of public skills charging standard rates. So this wouldn't be for like elders. This wouldn't. So like if you needed to learn weapon mastery skills, you could get a weapon mastery trainer in, right? Like generic rulebook skills. Uh 25 to 50 copper donation. So like this is pretty solid, honestly. 25 to 50 copper donation. Public in-game knowledge, ritual knowledge, elder augment skill knowledge, etc. So yeah, so like the thing is that like while in the rulebook and why I'm making these videos, we can't talk specifically about the effects of rituals because the effect of given rituals aren't laid out in the book, which means that you have to go figure that out for yourself. Foig, okay? Um, Lots of people in game know what stuff does. I'm dumb and I play a Null Ophidian, so I don't know what ritual stuff does because I don't care. But lots of other people care about rituals and they'll just tell you straight out most of the time. And if you don't know, there's probably somebody that does. Um, and so that's like considered public in-game knowledge or like knowledge on how specific rituals work, right? Like there are people in town that have seen every ritual over the sun. I could name you one person that knows every ritual under the sun and probably has them in their head. They're an elder worm. Um, then they would, I'm sure that if you talked to them and were friendly or you maybe paid them a couple pieces of coin, that they would be totally willing to share that information to you for like next to nothing because it's just regular information that most people could tell you. um Elder augment, this was back when the skills weren't, this was written, Filchard was written a long time ago, okay? Things have changed since then, but so now Elder Augment skill is in the rulebook, hence it is now public knowledge. That it didn't used to be that way. You didn't used to be able to see the Elder skills of races. You didn't get to see the Elder skills of augments. You barely got to see some of the pathways, right? Like again, Filchard didn't exist in the rulebook. You had to figure out what Filchard did. And you didn't know who Filchards were. But yeah, uh pretty good. Like just being able to pick up like generic knowledge that you didn't know for this is relatively cheap. We're talking about a couple of silver. So that's like maybe one adventure's worth of copper. Yeah. And like safely pass along coin or items to a representative of the feed guild to distribute or etc. as necessary in order to return favors to the guild. So you could just literally like there's nothing inherently morally ambiguous about this. Like there is, but you could also just be like paying your direct coin for these effects, okay? Like there's nothing that says I can't just send coin and be like, "Hey, here's coin, like can you do this favor for me?" Right? Like that's not there, you don't inherently have to be stealing that coin and then fencing it off, right? Uh, so yeah, being able to, so you can definitely come into town and be role playing a guy who just is well connected and he's like, yeah, I know things. This very much goes into the bard skill, bardic student of knowledge that can pay research to a plot marshal to recall information. That is probably like the more modern version of this skill, essentially, in this specific donation copper, not this whole skill. Because they can't get like runs out of town, they can't get a merchant to come into town, etc. Right? Uh, 50 to 75 copper. Incognito, anonymous, or otherwise predetermined appearance skill trainer. Uh, so if you wanted to learn Warlock, which is a pathway, that is kind of sketchy and you probably not easy to find warlocks, this guy could potentially get you a warlock trainer. This guy, and I'm gonna be 100% honest with you, this is not going to get you an ascetic trainer to come in. Okay, you're not going to be able to get an ascetic trainer off of this. I almost guarantee you that's how tough it is to find ascetic trainers. But you could, this guy might know a guy who is an ascetic trainer, and he might be able to point you in the direction of that, which you would pay a lot of good money for an ascetic trainer. Okay, like this is like you would pay this for that information. Like it's that tough to track down an ascetic. So yeah, still charges standard training fees. 75 copper plus, so you're looking at like a gold almost. Get a message somewhere. Like where you have like the potential to send a run, this is get a message somewhere. If it fails, they get a real detailed explanation. So it does not guarantee delivery or success here for like getting a run out of town. Um like they can just be like, well, you sent a run but you don't know anything. They can just that's pretty common to be completely honest. Get a message somewhere. If the message fails, the Filchard gets a real/detailed explanation. Like there were multiple Filchards there, and they saw what happened, but that's why they couldn't get the message through, right? This is very much like I need to send a run to the elemental plane, right? Name a target for a small Filchard raid. I imagine this means that Filchards are stealing stuff. If a raid fails, the user gets a raid real/detailed explanation why the burglary fell through. Yeah, it's a burglary. Like you name a target for a raid, and I imagine they probably pay you well. Like if you like going like, oh, I know Billy Bob Joe has like a bunch of coin in his purse, and he likes to keep it on a table in his cabin. I'm not going to steal it, but if I pay somebody almost a gold to do it, maybe I'll get more than a gold out of it, right? Like that's kind of what I'm thinking of when I think of a small filtered raid. Or maybe you know an NPC that's a jerk, and you're like, I know where this NPC lives. I'm gonna send a filtered raid there, and we're gonna steal from this guy, right? I would have no problem doing that. Um, when it comes to stealing from town, though, like that's a very different conversation because a lot of people, town is a hive mind, and they very much can be an echo. It can very often be an echo chambery like of morals very quickly when it comes to like role playing characters. Like, oh yeah, that's evil, let's get the evil guy, like we're playing a game, it's acceptable. um so like very people quickly jump on bandwagons. Okay, so you don't steal from town, I promise you it's not going to work out well. uh Private/hidden knowledge must be approved by chapter head only, right? That's nuts. So this goes into the bard skill, where bard has to have kind of a familiarity on the topic to be able to recall useful information. uh this is like the most direct way to actually like get information. Like I need information on this thing. Like this is probably in terms of like getting a solid answer better than bard. Bardic student of the Bardic colleges is the name of the skill. uh where it's like, oh, you studied in college and you can kind of recall some stuff from some books that you read, right? Like, so there's like a limit kind of there in the role play of like what they actually can tell you. There's not a limit here, I imagine. There's not a cap here. Uh, and if the chapter head isn't playing that game, good luck. I imagine they probably wouldn't rule it as this anymore, because this was written forever ago, and that was probably back when chapter heads were the only people who knew stuff. But there's a lot of plot marshals that have the equivalent of a chapter head's level of information, I'm assuming. And so a regular plot marshal should probably be able to give you this information if they've, and it depends on what you're asking too, right? So if you ask the plot marshal and they're a new plot marshal, they're probably gonna be like, and go find a better, like an older, more veteran plot marshal. But yeah, this is why you play Filtered. Honestly, is this like their cookie, and their craft totem could be neat. Lying under oath is just cool. Like this is oogles and oogles of roleplay. I want to play a raccoon beastman and come into town and pretend to be like an alchemist and like sell stuff out of the sleeves of my coat. Traditional like, hey kid, you want to buy some drugs? Not actual drugs, but uh, I want to play that sleazebag character, and this is like totally the path to do it. So yeah, that's Filtered. We hit 40 minutes. I talked about this for 10 minutes more than freaking Elementalist. Are you kidding me? Okay, yeah. Filchard's cool. There's lots of roleplay and cool fun stuff you can do as a Filchard. Don't steal from people in town. It's not gonna work out well. Best of luck. Bye.